Donk Nation, Jackson, Janet's greetings and welcome to your Daily Dose of Donkey with Ginger. It's time to get nonsensical with this Steelers talk. And Gingy, that's the best way to describe how I feel about the Steelers right now. It's like Omar Khan's out here building 4 different jigsaw puzzles and praying to God when he puts them together that it is going to be an absolute masterpiece. And Gingy, I know these moves as individual moves look really good on paper, I'm not going to lie. But as a whole, it just leaves me a little confused. And this is the part I want you to start in on, Gingy. Lasker's not going to be here because he's busy traveling. What is the best friend to a defense? Easy. A good defensive line, right? What is a quarterback's best friend? Easy. A good offensive line. The Steelers were weak at both of those last year and have done nothing to improve them. If anything, they've gotten worse with the loss of Chuck Okorafor and Amar Watts. Gingy, I'm a little confused here why the Steelers, the same thing that bothered the end of Colbert's career, avoiding the lines, is what's happening here at the start of Khan's career. A little bit concerning for me, Gingy.
Yeah, nonsensical donkey. Not quite sure on that one. Looking at probably going to pick some sort of O-line in the draft would be my imagining, but there's too many positions in need there. Need a center, need a tackle.
Potentially
but
a guard.
donkey. Overall, I understand what you're saying about the whole unit together. There were so many positions in need on this team, right? We're talking about really core issues. We're talking about we had to move players because of attitude problems and locker room issues. No wonder we're behind on, filling positions in certain areas of talent, because we had to deal with too much other baloney, in my opinion.
I hear what you're saying, but really the only player that we moved because of pure attitude things was Deontay Johnson.
And that's
Kenny
probably
Pickett
the worst
thing,
value that we got, right?
The
worst
Kenny
value,
Pickett,
yes. And the moving Kenny
right.
Pickett, that's a first rounder out the window. Now, I am proud of the Steelers
we replaced
for
him.
swallowing their pride and move. I really thought that the Steelers were going to go back on their word in regards of volunteers, not hostages. I thought they were going to try to save face with Kenny Pickett because he was a first rounder and not admit perhaps they made a mistake. But they actually moved on from a guy quickly, donkey. That's a step in the right direction for them.
They moved on quickly because they lied about an open competition and bringing in Justin Fields proved that, because from day one, everyone admits Justin Fields is probably an upgrade from Kenny Pickett, but from day one, Justin Fields was the backup to Russell Wilson. That's exactly what happened with Kenny Pickett when he was the backup to Russell Wilson. I know, but they said he was number one. Yeah, but he wasn't getting first team reps. The move on there's even parts here nor there, but that's not what I'm bringing up, Gingy. The Steelers are again avoiding improving on their lines. And this has been the crux of this team since at least 2020, when we go in and instead of spending early draft capital on offensive linemen who are good players and have potential, we draft a running back and a tight end. Every year we draft a wide receiver in the second round. The fact is, the reason the Steelers' offensive line is bad is because look at what the draft picks we spent on there. 6th rounders. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of hope Broderick Jones and that first round pick works out, but cool. That will give us 2+ starters on our offensive line if he turns out, and if Simualu stays healthy. That means 3/5 of our offensive line is average to below average at best, and currently we don't have a center who's taken a snap at center in his career. That is not the way to go into the draft, praying you get a guy. Because I remember doing it. I remember Kendrick Green. I remember Dan Moore Jr. Gingy, you go into the draft praying you hit, bad things happen.
Yeah, you can't hit on too many multiple positions, right? You need to pick up areas in need. We do have a lot of them, donkey. That's the issue, because the guys you hit on is the draft capital that you're able to play with, right? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily drafting for need, but right now the Steelers are going to have to do really all drafting for need, and that is dangerous.
Let's just look at this team right now, Gingy. right now the Steelers need at least one defensive lineman who's starter capable. Fair?
Like one. I don't think they could get away without it, but yeah.
That defensive line got ran over all last year because of it. You have to get trust me, signing Patrick Queen for $14 million a year makes no sense if he's just going to be getting hit by the right guard on every run play because the defensive line's terrible. So you need a defensive lineman. You need arguably another cornerback, unless you for some reason think Donta Jackson's going to play the way he played his rookie year, which was 5 years ago. Unless you think that's going to happen, you need another cornerback. You need to draft a wide receiver at this point because you don't have a number 2 on the team or find a way to fill that. You need to get an upgrade on the offensive line at left tackle or right tackle, whichever one you don't put Broderick Jones at. Hope Broderick Jones turns out. You need to acquire a center at some point. You need to hope James Daniels either steps up his game or find a replacement for him. And personally, if you're going to run a run heavy set, you need to find a blocking tight end who's a capable catcher. Right now, what we have is a catching tight end in Firemouth who can't block worth a damn, or a blocking tight end in Washington who can't catch worth a damn. I get it. The offseason additions make sense. Elliott as a good depth safety makes sense. Fringe starter guy to compete with KZ. Patrick Queen, a good downhill thumper because the Steelers still think it's 2004 and that linebackers don't have to cover.
Tone setter. You want to talk about your attitude, donkey? You want to talk about your edge? There might be some there.
Yeah, I'm gonna withhold judgment on Patrick Queen. I said that before. I've seen his ability to get downhill. I've seen his bad ability in coverage, and I remember his first 2 years before Roquan Smith showed up. I need to see it without him having a buddy who's a superstar next level guy. And that's the next problem, Gigi. So these are just baseline holes I see in the Steelers, right? Is that fair to say? Is there any spot that you think I'm wrong about?
No.
Okay, so those are baseline problems. Let's get to problem number 2. George Pickens needs a Batman in order to be Robin, okay? He's very much Mike Wallace, Emmanuel Sanders from the olden days of Steeler lore. Juju Smith-Schuster might be a better example, except he plays opposite of Juju. He's more Mike Wallace-esque. He needs that Antonio Brown, that guy to draw the double teams. The Steelers need that guy who's a playmaker. Now, we saw a little bit in Jaylen Warren. Does that continue? Is Jaylen Warren able to play this physical style with his small stature and continue? But outside of him, Gingy, is there a dude who makes his own plays on this offense?
No, I was calling for one, donkey. That's what I said. We need a point scorer, is what I called him earlier, I believe. Point scorer.
Yes, you did. I wanted you to bring that
who's
in
draw a double
to the show. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here comes the problem. The Steelers right now are at the point of free agency where these type of guys are gone, right? I've heard rumors of getting Brandon Ayuk, but that's going to cost you a first-round pick plus more. My understanding is it's a first-round pick plus a starting caliber player on your team is what the Niners are asking for. So that means you're just using that first-round pick to plug a hole, and you're creating another hole on your team while doing it. And I'm not even sure Ayuk's that guy, because Ayuk has always been the number 2 or 3 option in San Francisco, maybe even number 4, depending on your view of Christian McCaffrey. Because clearly Debo's the number 1. Clearly Kittle is probably the number 1, actually. So Ayuk falls in that next tier. Yeah, he puts up good numbers. Yeah, his body of work looks pretty fine. But I don't know if that addresses it. And here's the problem, Gingy. And this is the game I wanted to play earlier, and we talked about it. I give you 2 draft picks that come in and are above average starters from day 1. What positions do you go to, and does it change where the Pittsburgh Steelers finish this year?
You know what, donkey? I'll play your game, and I don't know if I'm going to win, but the best chance that I have to play it would be to give you an above average and or star elite tackle.
Okay.
And linebacker. To accompany
And
Patrick
linebacker?
Queen, you said Patrick Queen shines when he's got a star next to him. We're still looking for depth at that position, and if he had a star next to him, then we've got a real attacking defense, donkey. Maybe a guy who covers the seam.
Okay,
And that changes
you,
the coin right there. Because where do we get beat every year? And
First
again,
off,
I'm not saying I'm going to win this game, but that's my best chance at it.
I like what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. I actually really enjoy where you went with linebacker. So what you're saying is we're going to pay 3 players starting money for middle linebacker and then draft a middle linebacker probably in the first or second round. All right. That's a heavy investment in that group, and then we still have the big flaw of that defensive line still might not be good enough to let them play, as we've seen before. Plenty of guys look really good when they don't get blocked by linemen, and plenty of guys, Devin Bush, look really, really bad when a lineman's able to get up to that second level.
You might be able to replace that with D tackle then and have a better argument, donkey. I don't know, but there's got to be an equation that makes 2 starters put that team on top.
I hear you, but the way I would go about it, because I like what you said there, but then we still have a glaring hole at center, and we don't have a number 2 wide receiver still, which I don't know about that. My bigger problem here is you're trying to fix both sides of the ball, which is what the Steelers have tried to do here. They're like, we're going to kind of go in this way. Well, actually, they spent all their money on defense, so I don't even know what I'm talking about. We're going to go this way. And it makes no sense. To me, the way the Steelers have a chance this year, and I think they get blown out in the playoffs for doing it, but you draft a starting caliber right tackle in the second round, and in the first round, you get Powers Jackson from Oregon, and he turns out to be that next superstar center that seems to happen once every other draft, right? And then you have a good offensive line, Gingy. Pat Freiermuth finds his way to the bench for Darnell Washington, and the Steelers play the old, we're gonna, a la early Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. We're going to get 3 yards in a cloud of dust and beat you 21-19. And the big key here to me, Gingy, is Justin Fields has to win the starting job, and Justin Fields has to take that next step forward in terms of not turning the football over, which is what's been his biggest problem to this point of his career. Because the Steelers, hold on. To me, the Steelers do have one difference maker already on this team, but he is currently the backup quarterback. Justin Fields is a needle mover. I'm not going to say which way he moves the needle. It could be forward, it could be backwards. But Justin Fields is the one guy currently on this roster that could push the Steelers to the next level and make them not that third place team in the AFC North.
All right, all I wanted to contribute to that, donkey, was I'm not going to let a guy who continuously argued against me for Jameis Winston tell me that he's scared of turnovers with Justin Fields. All right, you wanted this, donkey. Don't tell me otherwise.
Jameis Winston
if you wanted Jameis Winston, Justin Fields is right up your alley, brother. All right,
Genji, there was a second part to my want. It was an offensive coordinator who would throw the damn football. Okay? No, we got Artie frickin' Smith, bro.
We didn't get one of those.
I don't want Jameis Winston in this offense. We're going to run the ball 7 times. Jameis is going to lose his goddamn mind and throw into triple coverage. No, thank you. No, thank you. I would have liked Jameis Winston. I still think Jameis Winston would have been a better pickup than, I don't know, what's his name? That's right, Russell Wilson. But, neither here, neither nor there. We are where we are. I'm not afraid of turnovers, Gingy, but the thing is, look at what happened in Chicago. The reason the Bears lost games and they would lose 21-point leads in the fourth quarter is because Justin Fields doesn't hold on to the football. I know his interception percentage doesn't look that bad at 2.6, but don't forget, this dude has lost double-digit fumbles every year in his career. He's a turnover machine. I think for the Steelers to take the next step forward, it has to be Justin Fields. But in order for Justin Fields to take the Steelers the next step, he has to stop fumbling the football. I don't mind the interceptions. because that can be done to aggressive throws down the field. Not big deal, in my opinion. The fumbles, though, Gingy, you don't win with a quarterback who fumbles. Ask Indianapolis when they had Matt Ryan and he fumbled the ball like 37 times in 3 games. I know that's a little high. It was like 10 games, but that's my point. He has to cut those turnovers. And Gingy, I just don't see how this team takes that. Because let's be honest, what were we last year? A wild card playoff team who got beat in the playoffs. So in order to improve from that, I don't see Russell Wilson taking us past that. I'd love to hear your case on how Russell Wilson takes us past being just a wild card losing team.
Okay, did you see them workout tapes he put on online?
Yeah, who the hell does he think he is? Is he steaming Willie Beeman on any given Sunday?
Listen, all right, I'm not going to lie. It's a little bit cheesy, but he throws the ball with some zip, Donkey. A lot more zip than we've seen in probably 7-8 years in Steeler land. So
go
I
put
understand
on the Mason Rudolph tape.
It is not,
and tell me that football has more zip than Mason Rudolph.
It is not a brand new Cadillac, okay, Donkey, but it's a nice used model. All right, it doesn't upset me.
Gingy, we went from a low mileage Hummer, let's just say, kind of big R, but really not successful because it can't make the turns, all right, in Mason Rudolph to a H2, not as much gas, but is a little better at the turns. But all in all, it's just shittier because who the fuck wants to drive an H2 when you could drive a Hummer? Like, come on, bro.
I don't know, Donkey. I'm not sold on Russell Wilson as the future.
That's in the garage right now that I need to tune up a little bit, and let me see if I can get that baby running. Put a nice new paint job on it, give it a new transmission, and I don't know, maybe fix the brakes a little bit, and let me see if that baby will run. Because we ain't competing in this division with an H2. All right, you just ain't keeping up. I mean, you have Lamar Jackson, you have Joe Burrow, and I know people are going to hate this, but there is no way if Deshaun Watson plays this year that he's any worse than he was last year. And if he's not worse than he was last year, the Browns are going to be better because remember, they've added a receiver in Jerry Jeudy, and their quarterback play last year outside of Deshaun Watson was pretty terrible. Even the Flacco part, yeah, he put up touchdowns, but he turned the ball over a bunch. So the way I'm looking at it is you have 2 elite quarterbacks, potential elite quarterbacks, and a guy who, not that long ago, everybody in the world, including the Steelers, wanted a chance at getting in Deshaun Watson. I just don't see how Russ Wilson gets you.
Well, I think it's an advancement forward, Donkey. I don't know if we're there yet. I don't think when you stack us up against the other elite teams in AFC, that we're there yet. But you don't make these jumps overnight.
But that's the problem.
Alternatives, Donkey.
But that's the problem, Gingy.
We're closer.
We are in the AFC. We're not in the NFC where you can kind of just, hope and pray that one thing goes your way. We're in the AFC where you have elite quarterback play all across the league, essentially, in the AFC. Almost every division, I can name you 2 to 3 teams that have better quarterback play than the Steelers do. And this is where my problem is. I hear you. Yeah, in theory, our quarterback room is better than it was last year, in theory. Now, where we're definitely better is offensive coordinator, hands down, no doubt. But does an offensive coordinator improvement with mediocre quarterback play, does that change anything? And if it doesn't, then shouldn't the Steelers be re-gearing and tearing it down in order to get themselves back to that competitive level? Because let's be honest here, Gingy, if you're not going to be competitive, the worst result in the world is going 9-8 or 10-7 and getting blown out in the first round of the playoffs, because that means you're going to be stuck with another mediocre draft pick and superstar potential is going to elude you. You look at these teams who have gotten to that next level, they didn't do it by having great seasons, unless you're lucky if Baltimore and everybody decides to skip Lamar Jackson, right? These teams did it by having a year or 2 or 3 where they weren't very competitive and they were able to load that roster up, get into a window, spend money, and attack. So And I told you this in 2020, and you told me, well, let's just see. I told you we needed to rebuild then. We didn't. Now we're in 2024. We need to rebuild. I don't want to be having this conversation in 2028, Gingy, with you going, well, it was worth taking a chance. No, it freaking isn't.
I mean, what am I supposed to say to that, donkey? I already gave you my points, man. Like,
I hear you.
Okay, so
But explain to me how this is different than 2020.
You think that?
I think Russell Wilson at this point of his career is no better than 2020 Ben Roethlisberger.
I don't agree with that.
All right, let's look at Ben Roethlisberger's stats from 2020 and compare them to Russell Wilson's stats last year. Is that a fair comparison to do?
Ben Roethlisberger can't throw a deep ball. Can Russell Wilson?
His deep ball percentage was not very good last year. And I
It's
don't
just
know.
a one-dimensional offense at the end of Ben Roethlisberger's career. That's all, because he was limited in the throwing potential.
Russell Wilson,
I don't know if Russell Wilson is
a guy who got outplayed by Geno Smith in Seattle, so they moved on from him and took a big dead cap hit. He's the guy who went to Denver to be the face of the franchise, and they're willing to pay him $80 million not to be the face of the franchise because they believe they're better without him than they were with him. You're going to have a hard time selling me Russell Wilson here. Let's go. 2020 Ben Roethlisberger completed 65% of his passes for 3,800 yards, 33 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. His average yards per attempt was 6.3. So 33 to 10 is the touchdowns to interception, 3,800 yards, 65% completions. Let's go Russell Wilson real quick here to get you what the comparison was, because I think they both would be about their age 36, 37 season. Russell Wilson last year, 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. And, of course, I picked a stats that doesn't give me any more detailed stats than that. So give me 1 second here to go find the better ones. So touchdowns to interceptions, they're about the same ratio there. Russ Wilson completed 66% of his passes last year. 66%, so very much right in line with what Ben was, which, by the way, was an upgrade from his year prior. And his yards per attempt were 6.9, which was the lowest in his career. So this is a guy who's trending downwards on the depth of his passes, has the same stats and ratio as Ben Roethlisberger. They're both probably the same amount of elusive in this part of their careers, where Ben would still shrug off a guy or two, and Russell Wilson could still make a guy or two miss. I just don't see how this isn't the same game I've seen before. The Steelers are going in there. They have big holes. They need to find a wide receiver, because I believe 2020 was either the last year of Juju where he got hurt or the year we let Juju go. I think it was the next year after. So the Steelers are relying on young guys to step in. The Steelers have big holes in offensive line. They have a big hole in defensive line because Stephon Tuitt had just retired. I just don't see how this team is any different from that team. And I know what that result is. I just don't understand why the Steelers are so scared of this rebuild word, other than Mike Tomlin has this pretty little streak where this team has become Mike Tomlin, Gingy. This team is average. This team does nothing but be average, but this team is happy about being average. That is what Mike Tomlin is. That is what Mike Tomlin does. That is what Mike Tomlin wants. The standard is the damn standard. And if you're okay with the Steelers continuing in the same way that has led to the longest playoff drought since the Pittsburgh Steelers have won a playoff game in the 70s, I don't know what else to say. You're just going to keep seeing more mediocrity. And as a Pirates fan, I've seen it for forever. I know the words they use. Signing washed up has-beens and guaranteeing them places on the team. I know what the story is. I've seen the story play out in Pittsburgh, then the Steelers 3 years ago. I've watched it play out for the Pirates my whole damn life. It's when
what
you're not willing to change
the coaching
your ways.
or the ownership?
It's top down. Art Rooney's accepting what Mike Tomlin does. If Art Rooney accepts what Mike Tomlin does, then the owner's saying he's okay with what the coach does. The coach guarantees us big changes are going to happen. We're going to do extensive interviews. They interviewed 3 people for the offensive coordinator position, and they hired the first guy who said, I love to run the football, baby. Down 32, we're running it for 3 up the middle. That's the first guy they saw. They liked it. No more candidates needed. Defensively, we're going to keep the same personnel. We're going to bring in the same type of personnel, which Patrick Queen is, a downhill thumper, a la Vince Williams. And we're going to keep the same scheme, but we're going to tell you changes are happening.
Yeah, there are some definite changes, though, Donkey, here. Looking to hopefully see Joey Porter Jr. come through this year. I'd like to see some. I'd like to see some movement on the corner on the secondary, Donkey. We really got our main problem that we talk about is those big contracts on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we're able to dump some of them, which that's what we should be doing now. I was praising them earlier.
Good guys before good players.
Yeah, you see, Donkey. That's where we line up. Unfortunately, some of our bigger name guys with bigger name contracts on defense, a la Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, while I really like those guys, right, their production does not equal the salary at this point.
Larry Ogunjobi, Dan Moore Jr., Najee Harris. Good guys before
that production
good
equals
players.
That salary right now.
That production does not equal that draft capital. It never has. But it's the Steelers' way. Good guys before good players. And we can date this all the way back to, and I think it's the reason the last time we won a playoff game was these guys. Mike Tomlin's afraid of having a Le'Veon Bell or an Antonio Brown. He even adopted a line after Le'Veon Bell, if you recall. I want volunteers, not hostages. Mediocre Mike was born the day he wanted volunteers and not hostages.
You like hostages, Donkey?
If they're going to help me win a playoff game, hell yeah, I do.
Hell yeah.
I'll take any hostage in the world if they're going to give me 260 yards, 3 touchdowns. If they're going to reach for that extra inch against the Baltimore Ravens, hell yeah, I like them.
Here's an interesting thing that I considered today, Donkey. I think this is the first draft class coming in that is in the era of some sort of NIL in college. How do you think that type of thing is going to affect future drafts? The way that young people are drafting, going into the NFL, already making business deals in college. How do you think that's all going to play out?
That is a great one, and I would love to go to this part. This is a good conversation, and hear me out. I think the changes are clearly going to be in college football, and you've seen it with the transfer portal, with the money, bringing players to the big schools, yada, 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 right? The only spot I see this making a difference in the NFL is, remember when Eli Manning said, there is no way in hell I'm playing in San Diego, right?
Yep.
The only difference is Eli Manning now, instead of getting drafted and forcing a trade to where he wants, is going to go back to school and make $5 million. Like, people are talking about, well, why doesn't Arch Manning leave if he's going to be a backup in Texas? Arch Manning's not going to leave Texas because he's making like $5 million to be the backup quarterback in Texas. He likes the university, so he gets to stay somewhere he likes. He gets to make $5 million. And it's not like as soon as Quinn Ewers goes to the draft next year, he's going to get a year of starting before he's draft eligible to show off for everybody. Hell, to be honest, if Arch Manning sat behind Quinn Ewers for 3 years, he'd probably still be a first-round draft pick, even without playing a college football game. Let's be honest here. But the only thing I see is you might see players now spend an extra year in college to avoid, going to a team they don't like.
Yeah.
Specifically quarterbacks. I don't think anyone else can really make that power play, but I think a quarterback could.
Interesting. Yeah. You see an era where I think that the players coming in, they'll be making lots of decisions in regards to business since they were 18. I think it's going to make them more discerning, perhaps, when they're coming
Fair.
into the NFL regarding money, compensation, and you're going to see some unique deals. Like you said, these guys are already used to making
Well, the
possibly
problem with what you're
$5 million a
saying
year.
there is the NFLPA has all the power. Draft
Yeah.
slots are slotted now. You can't get paid outside of the draft slot. So the olden days, yeah, I hear you. Like the olden days where players would hold out to want a better contract. Sometimes the 8th overall pick would get paid more than the first. Those days are done because of the way the NFLPA is structured, and they're not going to change that because why would they change their structure to appease players who aren't even part of their organization yet, right? They're never going
Yeah.
to change that. So I hear what you're saying, and in the olden days, you're 100% right. It's just that literally can't happen nowadays is the only problem there. What you could argue, though, is, well, a player, if he doesn't like his... See, this is where it gets fun. So with this new NIL deal, and with the NCAA now becoming for-profit, how likely is it that they let players who get drafted come back to school if they don't like where they got drafted? That could be
Huh.
where the change could happen.
What would be the incentive for them to do that?
To let a player come back to school, you don't think they could make $1 jillion by selling another year of Caleb Williams? It's money.
I
A
suppose
player comes
so.
back, they make money. The schools make money off that player. You don't think USC would love it if Caleb
USC
Williams...
would.
Yeah, so would the
USC
NCAA because they
would,
make more
yeah.
money. But that's what it's about. The schools, the players have a chance to make more money if they're able to come back, if they don't go somewhere they like. And I'm really surprised that they don't do that because going through the draft process, like the NBA did it, right? They changed their draft process to where if you don't hire an agent, if any time through the draft process something seems like it's not going your way, like you're starting to hear you're not going to get drafted anymore, you could be like, all right, I'm going to go back to school. I wouldn't be surprised if you see the NFL go into that type of system and players go back to school, or perhaps maybe one of these spring leagues start actually paying decent and you don't get drafted where you are, you could do that. But at this point, I'm like, the NFL might as well go the style of the NHL, and you draft the rights to a player after they
Mm.
become draft eligible. So after they're a junior, you draft the rights to them, and if they want to stay in school, they can stay in school. But when they come back, they become yours. That'd be the way the NFL could counter if college starts letting kids to go back.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. That's all. I just think it's going to have some level of impact, Donkey. I think it has to.
I So yes and no, right? Because these players are going to be already paid a little bit, so it's not going to be right off the bat. But because the bigger problem is the NFL is already structured that rookies are guaranteed certain deals. Like I said, what I see is I think you see a lot more of these fringe guys potentially go back to college for another year because they're going to make more money. So I think when you've seen in the past, we've seen a bunch of juniors who go undrafted or don't get drafted till the 6th or 7th round, right? That might
Right.
start becoming more of a rarity because if that guy's only going to be guaranteed 300,000 and he's making 600 or he's making about 100,000 at college and has a chance to up his stock, what I will see is I think you're going to see a lot more of those fringe prospects opt in to another season.
Mm-hmm. Makes
Whether or
sense
not
to
that
me.
whether or not that betters players, I don't know. I've always said playing the game is the best way to get better at the game. That's why I wanted a spring football league, because what that does is that lets a lot of those fringe rosters guys get a season worth of playing in and lets them showcase themselves. Now
Yeah.
that can happen at the college level because you're getting paid still. So that's where I would see the change, but I really don't think it makes a drastic change in the NFL.
I like the take, Donkey. I just wanted to
What were
know
you
what you
thinking was
thought.
going to be the big change here, Gingy? Because if it's on your mind, you really had the reasoning behind it, right?
Well, I was really just thinking about it just because I think it's a new era. You know, these
Mm-hmm.
students these incoming folks had just an infinitely different experience throughout their college career than I think their predecessors, right?
They
Just
didn't have
thinking
to
about
hide the
how
money.
that, yeah, just thinking about how their impacts, their attitudes, and their just their thought process towards the NFL and that payday, quote unquote payday, that which it is a payday, but compared to what what they're offered presently and what they were offered in the past, it's getting somewhat more, like you said, there's certain more benefits and upsides to staying in rather than coming out maybe as an unproven junior when you have an opportunity up that draft stock.
Yeah, when you're talking, you're going to get paid similar money, but you end up having a chance. Like, do you think anywhere in the world, this is going to be the guy I'm going to use as a case study. Do you think anywhere in the world, Maurice Claret, if he's getting paid in college, risks getting paid in college to go to the NFL early and try to get taken in a supplemental draft?
Mm-mm.
I don't see it because I guarantee you, if it was modern day at Ohio State, he's probably going to be making $500,000. He knows at best he's going to be a third round draft pick. Third round draft picks at that time made about what, $500,000. Like, there's zero reason for him to leave college and go to the pros because I guarantee you, Maurice Claret knew what he was going to run in the 40. It's not like these guys don't ever run the 40. He knew he was going to be slow. Okay.
Hmm. You think so, Donkey?
How often these dudes train specifically for that? Yeah, he freaking knew what he was going to run. The bigger problem was he was getting in trouble in college because of benefits, allegedly, and he wanted to go get a payday. Can't
Mm-hmm.
blame the dude. I mean, you got a specific skill set that's going to let you be successful for probably a maximum of 10 years. You better maximize your money. And that's why I said now that these kids, specifically juniors, aren't looking to go to the pros because they're not instantly like, man, I got to go get that money. They're already making that money. I think that really changes kids staying longer, which, whether or not that's better for the NFL, is a it'd be a fun debate to see. I don't know how you would do it. I don't know how you would prove it. Maybe look at the success of later round draft picks and how many make it the roster prior to the NIL and after the NIL, like late round draft picks specifically, or guys
Mm-hmm.
who I guess you'd have to look at draft stock and be like guys who had a fourth or later rating who decided not to come out as juniors went in and improved their draft stock as seniors. But then again, how many of those would have done it anyway, would have went back to school if there wasn't money? That's a hard part to do. It's a fun thing. I'm actually now my mind's kicking about how you would trace this, and I'm gonna probably make a couple spreadsheets this week. Thanks, Gingy. That's just what I needed. More work to
You're
do.
welcome.
I
Very welcome.
appreciate that one. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't know. I'm going to say one thing though, Gingy. Have you read recent articles from like any Steeler sites or any expert sites about oh how Russell Wilson was the perfect guy to come to Pittsburgh, how he's going to resurrect his career? Then we get Justin Fields, right? And now all the articles are how long till Justin Fields is the starter? Or it's the starter, bro.
It's a fly by night business, Donkey.
I'm laughing
Like
my
I say,
ass
it
off.
it won't take very long for Justin Fields' name to be called. If Russell Wilson throws a pick or two, it's gonna be dicey.
Yeah, it certainly is. The Steelers go out and lay an egg an opening day with Russell Wilson as quarterback. You know, it's going to
Could
be
be a
hell.
problem. Could be a problem,
Oh,
Donkey. Absolutely.
that's what I saw and saw as really fun stuff. And then, of course, finally, the first power rankings I saw post free agency came out, and they had the Steelers at 14th. And Gingy, I don't know if I could have put it in a more perfect spot, but that's probably exactly where I would have the Steelers. 14 means you're probably the 7 seed in your conference. Eh,
Hmm.
that feels about right for me, Gingy. What do you feel?
Yeah, probably right now, Donkey, as it stands. But we're gonna need some additional help.
Yeah, that's for sure. I don't know. Is there any other fun stuff that's been going on recently in the NFL? Hmm. Oh yeah. So Gingy,
Hmm.
I have an absolute horror scenario for you about
Mm.
the Pittsburgh Steelers and turning into the laughing stock of the division, right?
Oh, come on, no.
No. This is my bad dreams. Got to bring them up. This show's about being nonsensical, so we're gonna talk about my dreams here, right? On my dream, I'm
Okay.
picturing I see Devin Bush having a 24 tackle game against the Steelers. Devin Bush turning into the first round pick he was supposed to be, but the big problem, Devin Bush is now on the Cleveland Browns, and
Yeah,
right
he had
there,
a shot.
a former Steelers first round pick turning into a superstar on the Cleveland Browns. I was like,
Oh,
oh my god, this is how the detriment of becoming the Stains begins, and that
that is
was
how
my
horror
horrible
movies start.
nightmare. That was my horrible nightmare, and I felt I would share it here because I swear to God, if Devin Bush turns into a superstar in Cleveland, we officially are going to have the curse of the Bush.
I mean, I'm glad that you shared it, but I don't think you should ever speak of that again.
You afraid I'm going to speak it into reality? Well, that's all I had, Gingy.
There.
Any last nonsensical topics for you?
Nonsensical off-season donkey. Lots of speculation. I'd like to see a Jefferson or an Ayuk, or for goodness sakes, at least a Boyd. I don't know.
What the
We need
hell?
we
You're
need
not happy
somebody.
with
We
Van
lost an
Jefferson?
opportunity at a
We have a
Ridley, a
Jefferson.
Williams.
We have a Jefferson.
Yeah, not the one I wanted though, per se, donkey. But if you know, you know.
Would you settle for Stephon Diggs at this point of
Yeah,
his career?
yeah,
He
I
is
would
owed
if
he
you.
is owed like $30 million.
Oof, I suppose,
Yeah.
but we need a point scorer, donkey, for the third time this episode. Point scorer.
Fair enough. Perfect iteration to use during March Madness and the craziness that's going on in the tournament. So fair enough. By the way, SEC teams that got in instead of Pitt, you all suck. You all got upset, and the Pitt Panthers
Homer.
got jobbed. So that's all I gotta say.
Sounds good.
All right. I guess shout outs, Gingy, off season. Got anybody who's doing anything to make notice for you?
Nah, wait for draft time. We'll see if anybody's earned a shout out at that point. But nobody, I don't think anybody in Steeler land earned them yet.
That's fine. My shout out is going to be to the Pitt Panthers men basketball team player, Blake Hinson, coming over as a transfer and just being an all-out stud, getting Pitt back to the tournament, what should have been 2 straight years. Dude's a baller. Can't wait to see him in the NBA as he has that type of skill. And now I'll let you know, I am the Viking Donkey. That's Viking_Donkey on Twitch and Twitter. Your daily dose of Donkey with Ginger is where you get the nonsensical madness that this has become for the offseason. Gingy hanging in through 4 weeks already of the offseason. That's a rarity. We love to see it. Give him a like, a follow, a what's up. Come join him playing Diablo. Gingy, send him off.
Mutant Gigi in the
Off.
house. Mutant Gigi in the house. We hanging out. We talking nonsensical. Oh my goodness, Donkey. What a nonsensical off season. Brand new QB room. Lots of new theories at the disposable. Wave them if you got them. Here we go, Steelers.